Most people would never imagine that a simple penny sitting quietly in a jar, a drawer, or a pocket could hold a story far bigger than its 1 cent value. But the 1975 D Lincoln penny is one of those coins that proves how history can hide in plain sight, waiting for the right person to notice it. Today we're talking about the 1975 D Mint Mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have handled without a second thought, yet one that still sparks curiosity among collectors, historians, and everyday people who wonder if they might already own something special. This coin is a Lincoln 1-cent piece struck in 1975 at the Denver Mint, identified by the small letter D beneath the date on the front. It belongs to the long-running Lincoln Cent series that began in 1909, honoring the legacy of Abraham Lincoln. By 1975, the Lincoln penny was already a familiar part of American life, but that doesn't mean it was ordinary in the way many people assume. The year 1975 was a fascinating moment in U.S. history. America was adjusting to life after the Vietnam War, the economy was dealing with inflation, and everyday prices were climbing. Even the humble penny reflected these changes. Copper had become expensive, and the government was constantly rethinking how to produce coins efficiently while preserving tradition. The 1975 D penny was part of that balancing act, made in huge numbers to keep up with everyday commerce across the country. At the Denver Mint, millions upon millions of these pennies were struck to meet demand. The goal was not to create collectibles, but practical money meant to circulate, be spent, dropped, saved, and sometimes forgotten. Yet over time, collectors learned that even high-mintage coins can become interesting when condition, errors, or history enter the picture. Visually, the 1975 D Lincoln penny looks familiar at first glance. On the front, you see Lincoln's profile facing right, a design created by Victor David Brenner decades earlier. The inscriptions "In God We Trust," "Liberty," and the date 1975 frame the portrait, with the small D mint mark just below the year. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial dominates the design, with the tiny seated statue of Lincoln visible inside if you look closely. This reverse design was used from 1959 until 2008 and became iconic for generations of Americans. The metal composition of the 1975 D penny is especially important. It is made primarily of copper, about 95% copper with the remaining 5% zinc and tin. This makes it part of the last generation of mostly copper pennies produced before the switch to copper-plated zinc in 1982. Because of that, many collectors see the 1975 D penny as a piece of the classic copper era, which adds to its appeal. Now, let's talk about errors, because this is where curiosity really comes alive. While most 1975 D pennies are common, certain error coins can be surprisingly valuable. Errors like off-center strikes, double dies, clipped planchets, and misaligned dies have all been reported for this year. These mistakes happened during the minting process and were never meant to leave the mint, but some slipped through and entered circulation. To collectors, these errors turn an everyday penny into something unique. One of the most talked about possibilities is doubling, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled to the naked eye. While true major double die varieties for the 1975 D penny are rare and often confused with minor machine doubling, confirmed examples can still command strong interest. Other errors, like pennies struck on the wrong metal or with dramatic off-center designs, can be worth far more than face value, sometimes reaching hundreds or even thousands of dollars depending on how dramatic and well-preserved the error is. So why would anyone consider this penny rare or valuable when so many were made? The answer lies in condition and survival. Most 1975 D pennies were heavily circulated. They were spent, scratched, and worn down over decades. Finding one today in near-perfect or mint-state condition is far more difficult than people expect. Coins that look almost exactly as they did the day they left the mint are the ones collectors fight over. In the collector market, condition is everything. A typical circulated 1975 D penny is usually worth just 1 cent, maybe a few cents if someone wants it for a set. But in high mint state grades, especially with full original luster and no visible marks, values rise sharply. Certified examples graded by professional services have sold for impressive amounts at auction, sometimes reaching several $100s when the grade is exceptionally high. There have been real auction sales where pristine 1975 D pennies surprised casual observers. Coins graded at the top of the scale have drawn strong bidding because they represent the best surviving examples of a coin most people overlook. Error coins from this year have also appeared at auction, with dramatic minting mistakes fetching strong prices from collectors who appreciate their rarity and story. Identifying a genuine 1975 D penny is straightforward, but spotting a valuable one takes patience. Start by checking the date and the D mint mark under it. Then look closely at the surfaces. Sharp details, especially in Lincoln's hair and the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, are good signs. Original copper color with a bright or lightly toned appearance is another positive indicator. For errors, look for anything that seems off, such as missing letters, doubled text, or unusual shapes. Be cautious of fakes or altered coins. Some people try to add mint marks, exaggerate doubling, or alter coins to appear more valuable than they really are. A real mint mark should look natural and consistent with the rest of the coin. If a penny seems too good to be true, professional authentication is always the safest route. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1975 D penny. For example, many of these coins are still sitting in old jars and collections because people saved copper pennies during later years when metal prices rose. This means that undiscovered high-quality examples may still be out there. Another interesting detail is how this penny represents a moment just before major changes in U.S. coinage, making it a quiet witness to economic shifts that followed. Collectors love the 1975 D Lincoln penny not because it is flashy or famous, but because it tells a relatable story. It's a reminder that everyday objects can become historical artifacts over time. It connects childhood memories of spare change with the serious world of numismatics, where small details make a big difference. For modern collectors, this coin offers an affordable entry point into the hobby. You don't need to spend a fortune to start searching through pennies, learning about grades, errors, and history. And sometimes, the thrill of the hunt is worth more than the coin itself. Finding a sharply struck, beautiful 1975 D penny can feel like uncovering a small piece of forgotten America as you look at your own coins. Remember that history doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the bottom of a jar or the corner of a drawer. The 1975 D Lincoln penny may seem ordinary, but under the right light, with the right details, it can reveal a story that's far richer than its face value. So the next time you see a penny dated 1975 with a small D beneath the year, take a closer look. That tiny copper coin might just surprise you, and once you start noticing the details, you may never look at loose change the same way again. Welcome back. What if I told you that a penny you might have ignored for decades could still hold a story worth hearing, and in some cases, real money worth checking for? Today we're diving into the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance but carries history, surprises, and collector interest that most people never stop to notice at its core. This coin is a 1-cent piece struck in 1978, featuring the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front. When people say, no mint mark, they are referring to pennies made in Philadelphia, because during this time the Philadelphia Mint did not place a mint mark on Lincoln cents. That single detail has sparked decades of curiosity among collectors and everyday Americans who wonder if their spare change might be hiding something special. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the late 1970s. America was going through economic uncertainty, inflation was a daily concern, and the cost of producing coins was under constant review. In 1978, the Lincoln cent was still made primarily of copper, unlike modern pennies that are mostly zinc. These coins were produced by the millions at the United States Mint to keep up with everyday commerce, meaning this penny was part of daily life for nearly every American. The design of the 1978 no-mint mark penny stayed true to tradition. On the front, Lincoln faces to the right with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date to the right. The back features the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been in use since 1959. If you look closely, you can actually see a tiny statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making it one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. Now let's talk about what makes this penny interesting beyond its face value. The metal composition is a big part of the story. The 1978 penny is about 95% copper and 5% zinc. That gives it a heavier feel and a richer color compared to newer pennies. Many collectors specifically seek out these older copper cents because they represent the end of an era. Just a few years later, rising copper prices forced the mint to change the formula. So is the 1978 no-mint mark penny rare? In general, no. Millions were produced and most circulated heavily. But rarity in coin collecting isn't always about how many were made. It's about condition, errors, and demand. A heavily worn 1978 penny is usually worth just 1 cent. However, a coin that has never been circulated, with sharp details and original shine, can be worth significantly more to collectors. Errors are where things get exciting. Some 1978 no-mint mark pennies were struck with mistakes that make them stand out. These include off-center strikes, where the design is not properly aligned, and double die errors, where parts of the lettering or date appear doubled. There are also pennies with clipped planchets, meaning a piece of the coin's edge is missing due to a cutting error during production. These mistakes are rare compared to normal coins and can dramatically increase value. Collectors have paid anywhere from a few dollars to several $100s for high-grade or error examples of this penny. In certified mint-state condition, especially grades above MS65, auction prices have climbed steadily over the years. While it's not a lottery ticket, it's far from worthless when found in exceptional condition. So how can you tell if you have a valuable one? First, look at the date. It must read 1978, and there should be no letter under the date. Next, examine the condition. Sharp edges, clear lettering, and minimal scratches are good signs. A magnifying glass can help you spot doubling in the words or numbers. Weight also matters. A genuine 1978 copper penny should weigh about 3.11 grams. Anything significantly different could indicate damage, alteration, or a counterfeit. Speaking of counterfeits, they do exist, but they're uncommon for this coin. Most fakes involve altered dates or added errors meant to trick inexperienced buyers. The best protection is knowledge and, for valuable finds, professional grading from a trusted service. Certified coins are sealed in protective holders and authenticated, removing much of the guesswork. Here's a fun fact many people don't know. The Lincoln Memorial design on the back of the penny is so detailed that under magnification, you can see Lincoln's seated statue inside the building. That detail wasn't always easy to strike cleanly, which is why strong examples with crisp lines are especially desirable to collectors. Another surprising detail is how many of these pennies are still sitting in jars, drawers, and old collections across the country. Because people rarely thought of them as valuable, many were saved accidentally. That means new discoveries still happen today, especially when someone finally decides to sort through decades of spare change. Collectors love the 1978 no-mint mark penny because it represents a bridge between old and new. It's a copper coin from a time when pennies still felt substantial, yet it's modern enough to be familiar. For beginners, it's an accessible entry into coin collecting. For seasoned collectors, high-grade or error examples are a satisfying challenge to track down. In the end, this penny teaches an important lesson. Value isn't always obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. The next time you see a 1978 penny with no mint mark, don't rush past it. Take a moment, turn it over, check the details. Because even the smallest coin can carry history, craftsmanship, and the thrill of discovery. And that's what makes the 1978 no-mint mark Lincoln penny special. Not because it guarantees riches, but because it invites curiosity. And in the world of coin collecting, curiosity is often where the real value begins. Most people walk past it every day without a second glance. Yet this tiny copper-colored coin could be sitting quietly in your pocket, your jar, or an old drawer, carrying a story few people ever stop to hear. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny looks ordinary at first glance, but once you understand what it is, where it came from, and why collectors still talk about it today, you may never look at spare change the same way again. The 1984 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a United States 1-cent coin struck in Philadelphia. When a penny has no mint mark, it means it was produced at the main facility of the United States Mint in Philadelphia. For decades, pennies made there were intentionally left without a letter under the date, making the absence of a mint mark a normal feature rather than a mistake. By 1984, the Lincoln penny had already been part of American life for more than 75 years. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th birthday of Abraham Lincoln, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. The design was familiar to generations of Americans, and by the 1980s it was deeply woven into daily commerce, childhood memories, and even cultural identity. The year 1984 sits in an interesting moment in U.S. coin history. Just 2 years earlier, in 1982, the mint made a major change to the penny's metal composition. Rising copper prices forced a shift away from solid copper coins. The result was a penny made mostly of zinc, coated with a thin layer of copper. This change dramatically reduced production costs and forever altered how pennies were made. The 1984 no-mint mark penny reflects this transition. It weighs about 2.5 grams and is composed of 97.5% zinc with a 2.5% copper coating. To the naked eye, it still looks like the classic copper penny, but inside, it tells a very different story. This new composition also introduced new vulnerabilities, including bubbling, blistering, and corrosion when the thin copper layer is damaged. On the front of the coin, Lincoln's portrait faces right, a design created by Victor David Brenner. Above Lincoln's head is the word liberty, and in front of his face is the motto "In God We Trust." Below is the date, 1984. If there is no letter under the date, you are looking at the Philadelphia issue. The back of the coin features the Lincoln Memorial, a design introduced in 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated figure of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the most detailed reverse designs ever used on a U.S. coin. This design remained in use until 2008, meaning the 1984 penny belongs to the final decades of the memorial era. So why do collectors care about a penny that was minted by the billions? In 1984 alone, Philadelphia produced well over 4 billion Lincoln cents. With numbers that large, rarity does not come from low mintage. Instead, value comes from condition, errors, and survival. In everyday circulated condition, a 1984 no-mint mark penny is usually worth only 1 to 3 cents. That may sound disappointing, but condition changes everything. Coins that were pulled from circulation early and stored carefully can still show full original luster. These uncirculated examples are far less common than most people realize. In high mint state grades, especially those certified by professional grading services, values can rise significantly. A sharply struck, red-colored 1984 no-mint mark penny with no wear can sell for several dollars, and in top grades sometimes much more. While these are not retirement coins, they are respected condition rarities among modern cent collectors. Errors are where the real excitement begins. While the famous double die of 1984 is more commonly associated with the Denver Mint, Philadelphia pennies from this year are not immune to mistakes. Off-center strikes, clipped planchets, die cracks, and weak strikes all exist and can command premiums. Another issue tied to the zinc composition is plating errors. Some 1984 pennies show peeling or bubbling copper surfaces. While damage usually lowers value, certain mint-caused plating flaws are collectible and can sell for more than face value if properly identified. Collectors and auction houses have recorded steady interest in high-grade examples. At major numismatic auctions hosted by companies like Heritage Auctions, certified 1984 no-mint mark pennies in exceptional condition have sold for prices that surprise casual collectors. These sales prove that even common coins can become desirable when preserved perfectly. Identifying a genuine 1984 no-mint mark penny is straightforward, but spotting value requires care. First, check the date and confirm there is no letter beneath it. Next, examine the color. Original red pennies are more valuable than brown or spotted ones. Then look closely at the surfaces for unusual marks that could indicate mint errors rather than damage. Weight can also be a clue. A genuine 1984 penny should weigh close to 2.5 grams. Significant differences may point to damage or alteration. Magnification helps reveal details, especially when checking for doubling in letters or numbers. Fake pennies are rare because there is little incentive to counterfeit such a low-value coin. However, altered coins do exist. Some people attempt to modify dates or remove mint marks from other pennies. Under magnification, these alterations usually become obvious, showing tool marks or unnatural surfaces. One fascinating detail about the Lincoln Memorial reverse is that it is the only U.S. coin design where the same person appears on both sides. Lincoln's portrait is on the front, and his statue is visible on the back. Many people spend decades using these coins without ever noticing this hidden detail. Another surprising fact is how quickly zinc pennies can deteriorate if damaged. Once the copper coating is breached, moisture can cause rapid corrosion. This makes clean, undamaged 1984 pennies harder to find today than many older copper cents that survived in better condition. Collectors love the 1984 no-mint mark penny not because it is rare in numbers, but because it represents a moment in American minting history. It reflects changing economics, evolving technology, and the challenge of preserving modern coins in top condition. For beginners, this penny offers an affordable entry into collecting. For experienced collectors, it provides a condition challenge that rewards patience and attention to detail. It reminds everyone that value is not only about age or rarity, but about survival and care as you look through your change or old coin jars. Remember that history does not always announce itself loudly. Sometimes it whispers from the smallest places. The 1984 no-mint Mark Lincoln penny may never headline the most expensive coin lists, but it carries a quiet legacy that continues to fascinate collectors across the country. So the next time you see a plain-looking penny with no mint mark and the date 1984, pause for a moment. That simple coin has traveled through decades of American life, passed through countless hands, and survived long enough to tell its story to you. And once you know that story, even the most ordinary penny can feel a little extraordinary. Most people have walked past this coin 1,000 times without ever noticing it. Yet one small detail on this ordinary-looking penny can change how collectors see it forever. What if I told you that a simple 1985 penny with a tiny letter on it could tell a bigger story about American history, mass production, and hidden value sitting in plain sight? The coin we are talking about today is the 1985 D-Mint Mark Lincoln penny. At first glance, it looks just like countless other pennies you may have carried in your pocket, dropped into a jar, or ignored on the sidewalk. But behind this everyday coin is a fascinating story that connects modern America, one of the busiest mints in the world, and the habits of collectors who never stop searching for something special. This penny is part of the Lincoln Cent series, one of the longest-running coin designs in U.S. history. It features the familiar portrait of Abraham Lincoln on the front, a design that has been used since 1909. By 1985, the Lincoln penny was already a trusted symbol of American money, passed from hand to hand millions of times every single day. The year 1985 was a period of stability for U.S. coinage. There were no major redesigns, no dramatic changes in size or shape, and no shortages of metal. The U.S. Mint was focused on producing large quantities of coins to keep up with everyday commerce. One of the main facilities responsible for this task was the Denver Mint, which marked its coins with a small letter D just below the date on the front of the penny. That single letter tells us exactly where the coin was made. In 1985, the Denver Mint produced billions of Lincoln pennies. That alone might make you think this coin has no chance of being collectible. After all, how can something made in such huge numbers be special? The answer lies in the details, the condition, and the small surprises that sometimes slip through even the most advanced minting process. The 1985 D Lincoln penny is made primarily of zinc with a thin outer layer of copper. This composition began in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the U.S. Mint to change how pennies were made. Although the coin looks like solid copper, it is actually copper-plated zinc, which makes it lighter than older pennies from earlier decades. This change is one of the reasons collectors pay close attention to pennies from the 1980s. The front of the coin shows Lincoln facing right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, the word "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1985 to the right. Just below the date is the D Mint mark, indicating Denver. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that was used from 1959 until 2008. If you look closely, you can even spot a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people never noticed. So why would anyone care about a penny like this? The answer is condition. Most 1985 D pennies were heavily used. They were spent, scratched, bent, and eventually forgotten. But a small number survived in near-perfect condition. These coins were either pulled from circulation early or saved by collectors who recognized their pristine surfaces. In the coin world, condition is everything. A 1985 D Lincoln penny in worn condition is usually worth only face value. However, when you find one in brilliant uncirculated condition, especially with sharp details and original shine, the value can rise significantly. Coins graded by professional services can sell for several dollars, sometimes much more, depending on how flawless they are. Even more exciting are error coins. During the minting process, mistakes occasionally happen. Some 1985 D pennies show off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly centered on the coin. Others may have weak strikes, doubled lettering, or unusual surface marks caused during production. These errors turn an ordinary penny into something collectors actively hunt for. There have been documented sales where high-grade 1985 D pennies, certified by grading companies, sold for impressive prices compared to their face value. While these are not million-dollar coins, they prove that even modern pennies can become valuable under the right circumstances. Collectors love these examples because they show how rarity is not always about age, but about survival and quality. Identifying a genuine 1985 D penny is simple if you know what to look for. First, check the date and make sure it reads 1985. Then look just below the date for the small d mint mark. The coin should feel relatively light compared to older copper pennies from before 1982. The color should be a bright copper tone. Although circulation can dull it over time to avoid fakes or altered coins, pay attention to the mint mark. On genuine coins, the D is clean and well-formed, matching the style used by the Denver Mint in the 1980s. Added or altered mint marks often look uneven, misplaced, or poorly shaped. If you ever suspect a coin might be valuable, having it examined by a professional is always the safest choice. One fun fact about the 1985 D Lincoln penny is how many people unknowingly saved them. During the 1980s, coin collecting was popular among families, and many parents put rolls of pennies away for their children. Today, those rolls are being rediscovered, sometimes containing high-quality examples that never saw circulation. Collectors today appreciate the 1985 D penny because it represents an era of transition. It sits firmly in the modern age of coin production, yet it still carries the classic Lincoln Memorial design that many people feel nostalgic about. It reminds collectors that history does not always have to be ancient to be meaningful. Another surprising detail is how this coin teaches new collectors an important lesson. It shows that you do not need to search for gold or silver to enjoy coin collecting. Sometimes, the thrill comes from finding something ordinary in extraordinary condition. That idea keeps collectors checking their change, even decades later. As more people learn about coin grading and error coins, interest in modern Lincoln pennies continues to grow. The 1985 D penny is often used as an example in beginner collections because it is affordable, easy to find, and full of learning opportunities. It bridges the gap between casual interest and serious collecting. So the next time you see a penny dated 1985 with a small d beneath the year, take a moment to look closer. You might be holding a piece of everyday history that survived against the odds. And while most will remain simple 1-cent coins, a rare few could be worth far more than you expect. Coins like the 1985 D Lincoln penny remind us that value is not always obvious at first glance. Sometimes, the real story is hidden in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. And who knows, the next time you reach into your pocket or open an old jar of change, you might just uncover a small copper-colored clue that leads to a much bigger discovery. Imagine holding a penny that looks ordinary, one you might have ignored your entire life, yet it carries a quiet story from the late Cold War era, a year when America was changing fast and few people thought twice about the coins in their pockets. That simple copper-colored cent from 1988 might be far more interesting than you ever expected. Today we're talking about the 1988 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that millions of Americans have seen, spent, and forgotten, yet one that still sparks curiosity among collectors and everyday people alike. This penny doesn't shout for attention. There's no flashy mint mark, no dramatic redesign at first glance. And that's exactly what makes it so fascinating. The 1988 Lincoln penny with no mint mark was struck in Philadelphia, the oldest mint in the United States. Coins made there traditionally carried no mint mark at all, which often confuses people who assume something is missing. In reality, the absence of a mint mark is the clue. It quietly tells us where and how this coin was made, right at the heart of American coin production. To understand this penny, we need to go back to the year 1988. America was nearing the end of the Cold War. Personal computers were entering homes. Gasoline was cheap by today's standards. And the U.S. Mint was producing billions of coins each year to keep up with daily commerce. The Lincoln cent was already a familiar symbol, having honored Abraham Lincoln since 1909, and by 1988 its design was deeply woven into everyday American life. This penny features the familiar portrait of Lincoln on the front, a design originally created by Victor David Brenner. Lincoln faces right, calm and thoughtful, with the date 1988 just below him. On the back, you'll see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been used since 1959 to mark the 150th anniversary of Lincoln's birth. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside the memorial, making this one of the most detailed designs ever used on a circulating U.S. coin. One of the most important features of the 1988 penny is its metal composition. At this time, the U.S. Mint had already shifted away from solid copper. Instead, the coin is made of 97.5% zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in 1982 due to rising copper prices. Many people still assume older pennies are solid copper, but by 1988 that was no longer the case. This difference matters to collectors and helps identify the coin correctly. At first glance, the 1988 no-mint mark penny seems extremely common, and in many ways it is. The Philadelphia Mint produced well over 5 billion Lincoln cents that year. That massive number means most examples you find in circulation are worth just 1 cent. But value in coin collecting is rarely about how many were made. It's about condition, mistakes, and stories. This is where things get interesting. While standard 1988 pennies are common, certain examples stand out. Coins that were perfectly struck, never circulated, and carefully preserved can be worth more than face value. In mint state condition, especially those graded very highly, a 1988 no-mint mark penny can sell for several dollars, sometimes more, depending on demand. Even more intriguing are error coins. During the coin-making process, mistakes sometimes happen. In 1988, a few pennies escaped the mint with noticeable errors. Some were struck off-center, where the design appears shifted. Others show double details, where parts of the lettering or date appear slightly duplicated. There are also examples with cracks in the die, creating raised lines across the coin. These errors transform an everyday penny into a collectible conversation piece. Real auction records show that while most 1988 no-mint mark pennies trade for very little, exceptional examples can surprise people. High-grade uncirculated coins certified by professional grading services have sold for prices ranging from a few dollars up to around $20 in rare cases. Error coins can bring even more, depending on how dramatic and clear the mistake is. These aren't million-dollar coins, but they prove that even modern pennies can carry hidden value. If you're wondering how to tell if you have a genuine 1988 no-mint mark penny, the process is simpler than you might think. First, check the date. It must clearly read 1988. Next, look just below the date. If there is no letter like D or S, it was made in Philadelphia. The weight should be about 2.5 grams, consistent with zinc-based cents. The color should be a bright or slightly dull copper tone, not pure silver or unusually dark. Be cautious of altered coins. Sometimes people try to remove mint marks from Denver or San Francisco coins to make them appear more interesting. Under magnification, these altered areas often look scratched or uneven. A genuine no-mint mark penny will have a smooth surface where the mint mark would normally be absent. One fun fact about the 1988 Lincoln penny is how often it appears in collections unintentionally. Many people saved pennies from the 1980s without realizing it, tossing them into jars or drawers. Decades later, these coins resurface, sparking curiosity and sometimes inspiring new collectors. The 1988 penny often serves as a gateway coin, something simple that leads people into the wider world of numismatics. Another surprising detail is how well this coin represents its era. By 1988, vending machines, parking meters, and cash registers relied heavily on consistent coin sizes and weights. The zinc-based Lincoln cent was engineered to meet these needs efficiently. This penny isn't just money. It's a small piece of American industrial history. Collectors today appreciate the 1988 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare in the traditional sense, but because it's relatable. It reminds people of childhood allowances, school lunch lines, and everyday transactions. In coin collecting, emotional connection often matters just as much as rarity. For beginners, this penny is an excellent learning tool. It teaches how mint marks work, why composition matters, and how condition affects value. For experienced collectors, it offers the thrill of searching for errors and high-grade examples hiding in plain sight. As you look at a 1988 Lincoln penny now, you might see it differently. What once felt insignificant becomes a small time capsule from a specific moment in American history. It's proof that even the most ordinary objects can carry stories worth telling, so the next time you come across a penny dated 1988 with no mint mark, don't rush to spend it. Take a moment. Look closer. You might not be holding a fortune, but you are holding a quiet piece of the past, still waiting to be noticed. And sometimes, that sense of discovery is worth far more than 1 cent. What if the penny sitting quietly in your pocket right now is hiding a story that most people never notice? A story tied to American history, everyday change, and the tiny details collectors obsess over. Today we're talking about the 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, but carries more meaning and potential than many people realize. This coin is a Lincoln 1-cent piece dated 1989, and the words "no mint mark" simply mean it was struck without a letter below the date. In the U.S. coin system, that usually points to one specific place. The majority of Lincoln pennies without a mint mark were made at the Philadelphia Mint, the original home of American coin production. Millions of these pennies were made, passed hand to hand, dropped in jars, and forgotten in drawers, which is exactly why so many people overlook them today. To understand this penny, we need to step back to the year 1989. America was changing fast. The Cold War was ending, technology was moving forward, and everyday life felt more modern than ever. The U.S. Mint was focused on producing massive numbers of coins to keep up with commerce. Pennies were still essential for daily transactions, and the Lincoln cent was already a familiar symbol, honoring Abraham Lincoln, whose portrait had appeared on the coin since 1909. The goal in 1989 wasn't to create something rare or flashy. It was to make reliable money for everyday USE. By 1989, the Lincoln penny had already gone through a major change. Earlier pennies were made mostly of copper, but rising metal prices forced the mint to switch. The 1989 no-mint mark penny is made of zinc with a thin copper coating. That change makes the coin lighter and cheaper to produce, and it also explains why modern pennies sound different when dropped compared to older ones. On the front, you see Lincoln's right-facing portrait, calm and steady. On the back, you see the Lincoln Memorial, a design that symbolized respect, history, and national pride for decades. At first glance, there's nothing unusual about this coin, and that's exactly where the story gets interesting. Most 1989 no-mint mark pennies are common. In worn condition, they're usually worth 1 cent. But collectors know that value isn't always about the date alone. It's about condition, mistakes, and small details that escaped quality control. Coins are mass-produced objects, and whenever millions are made, small errors are bound to slip through. Some 1989 pennies show off-center strikes, where the design is not perfectly centered. Others may have doubled lettering, especially noticeable in words like liberty or in God we trust. There are also examples with die cracks, missing letters, or weak strikes. These errors can turn an ordinary penny into something collectors actively search for. A clean, uncirculated 1989 no-mint mark penny, one that never entered circulation, can also attract attention because it represents the coin exactly as it left the mint. So why do people talk about value with this coin if most are common? Because collectors don't just collect dates. They collect stories, conditions, and surprises. A regular circulated 1989 penny is pocket change. But a high-grade example, professionally graded and preserved, can sell for several dollars. Error examples can sell for much more, depending on how dramatic and rare the mistake is. Coins with clear doubling or striking errors have been sold at coin shows and online auctions for tens or even hundreds of dollars. There are documented cases where pristine 1989 Lincoln cents graded at the top levels have sold for strong prices among registry collectors. These are people trying to build the finest known sets, where even modern coins matter. For them, finding a flawless example is a challenge, not a guarantee. That competitive spirit is what pushes values higher for certain examples. If you're wondering how to tell if you have a real 1989 no-mint mark penny worth keeping, start with the basics. Look at the date and check below it. If there's no letter, it was struck in Philadelphia. Next, check the color and weight. It should have a copper appearance, but feel lighter than older pennies. Use a magnifying glass to examine the lettering. Look for doubling, cracks, or anything that seems off. Compare it to another penny from the same year if possible. Real errors usually stand out when you know what to look for. Be cautious about fakes or exaggerated claims. Some sellers try to pass off normal wear as an error. Others may alter coins after they leave the mint. True mint errors happen during production, not later. If you think you've found something special, a professional coin dealer or grading service can help confirm it. Authentication is key in the coin world, especially when money is involved. One fun fact about the 1989 penny is how invisible it became over time. Unlike older wheat pennies or special commemorative coins, these cents blended into daily life. Yet they represent a snapshot of America right before the 1990s began. Another interesting detail is that the Lincoln Memorial design used on this coin would soon be retired. In 2009, the back design changed, making 1989 part of the final decades of a long-running era. Collectors today love this coin not because it's automatically rare, but because it rewards careful observation. It teaches beginners that coin collecting isn't just about chasing famous dates. It's about learning how coins are made, understanding condition, and training your eye to notice details others miss. For many collectors, finding a high-quality 1989 no-mint mark penny in circulation feels like winning a small treasure hunt. The appeal also comes from accessibility. Almost anyone can start looking for this coin. You don't need expensive equipment or insider knowledge. You just need patience, curiosity, and a willingness to look closely at everyday objects. That's what keeps the hobby alive. Coins like this remind us that history doesn't always come wrapped in gold. Sometimes it's hiding in plain sight, right in your change. As you look through your pennies from now on, remember this: that simple 1989 no-mint mark Lincoln penny might not make you rich overnight, but it connects you to a moment in American history, to the art of minting, and to a worldwide community of collectors who love the hunt. And the next time you hear a penny clink on the table, you might pause just a little longer, wondering what quiet story it has to tell. Most people would walk right past this penny without a second thought. But what if I told you that a simple 1-cent coin from 1991 could still be hiding an unexpected story, and in rare situations, real value, right in your pocket? Today we're talking about the 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that looks ordinary at first glance, yet connects directly to American history, everyday life, and the hidden world of coin collecting that many people never realize exists. The 1991 Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States during a time when America was changing fast. The Cold War was ending, technology was accelerating, and millions of pennies were quietly being produced to keep the economy moving. When collectors say, no mint mark, they're referring to pennies made at the Philadelphia Mint, which traditionally did not use a mint mark on most pennies during this period. So a 1991 penny with no letter under the date is exactly how it was meant to be. This coin continues the long-running Lincoln cent series that began in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of the birth of Abraham Lincoln. By 1991, Lincoln had already been on the penny for more than 80 years, making it one of the most recognizable coins in American history. In 1991, the United States Mint was producing massive quantities of coins to meet everyday demand. Gas stations, grocery stores, vending machines, and payphones all relied heavily on pennies at the time. That year, the Philadelphia facility alone struck over 4 billion Lincoln cents. These coins were never intended to be rare. They were meant to circulate, get used, scratched, and eventually forgotten. But history has a funny way of turning ordinary objects into collectibles. The 1991 penny features the classic Lincoln portrait designed by Victor David Brenner, showing Lincoln facing right with a calm, thoughtful expression. The words "In God We Trust" appear above his head, liberty is placed to the left, and the date sits to the right. On the reverse, you'll find the Lincoln Memorial design, which had been used since 1959. If you look closely at the memorial, you can actually see a tiny seated statue of Lincoln inside, making this one of the few U.S. coins to show the same person on both sides. The metal composition is another interesting detail. By 1991, pennies were no longer made mostly of copper. Rising metal prices forced a change in 1982, and the 1991 penny is made of zinc with a thin copper coating. It weighs about 2.5 grams and has a bright, slightly lighter feel compared to older copper pennies from the 1960s and earlier. So if billions were made, why does this coin matter at all? The answer lies in condition, errors, and collector demand. While most 1991 no-mint mark pennies are only worth face value, a small number stand out. Coins that were never circulated, meaning they show no wear and still have their original mint shine, can be worth more than 1 cent. In top condition, certified examples have sold for anywhere from $10 to over $50, depending on grading and eye appeal. But the real excitement comes from mint errors. Some 1991 pennies were struck with off-center designs, meaning part of the coin's image is missing. Others show double die errors, where letters or numbers appear doubled due to a misalignment during the minting process. There are also examples with broad strikes, where the coin spreads out wider than normal, or weak strikes, where details appear faint. These errors happen by accident during high-speed production at facilities like the United States Mint. Because quality control wasn't perfect, a small number of flawed coins escaped into circulation. Today, collectors actively search for these mistakes because no two error coins are exactly alike. At auctions and collector shows, verified 1991 no-mint mark penny errors have sold for prices ranging from $20 to several $100s, depending on how dramatic and rare the error is. Even a subtle doubling on the date or lettering can significantly increase value if confirmed by a professional grading service. If you're wondering how to tell whether your penny is special, start with the basics. Look at the date and check for a missing mint mark. That's normal for Philadelphia coins, so don't expect a letter there. Next, examine the coin under good lighting. Check the edges for unusual thickness, the lettering for doubling, and the overall strike quality. Compare it to other pennies from the same era if possible. A real coin will have the correct weight and metal feel. Fakes are extremely rare for this specific penny because its base value is low, but altered coins do exist. Some people try to modify coins to imitate errors, so be cautious. If you believe you found something unusual, professional authentication is always the safest step. One fun fact about the 1991 penny is that many of them are still in circulation today. Because pennies last a long time and are often overlooked, there's a good chance you've handled one recently without realizing it. These coins have passed through millions of hands, witnessed countless transactions, and quietly recorded everyday American life. Collectors love this penny not because it's instantly valuable, but because it represents opportunity. It reminds people that coin collecting isn't only about rare gold pieces or ancient silver. Sometimes it's about paying attention to what you already have. Searching through pocket change creates a sense of discovery, and that thrill keeps collectors engaged year after year. The 1991 no-mint mark Lincoln penny also serves as a teaching coin. It helps new collectors learn how mint marks work, how coin conditions affect value, and how errors happen. For many hobbyists, finding a clean, uncirculated example or a small error from this year becomes their first meaningful discovery. As time passes, fewer high-quality examples remain. Coins get lost, damaged, or melted. That gradual disappearance slowly increases collector interest, especially for well-preserved pieces. While this penny may never reach the legendary status of early 1909 or 1943 Lincoln cents, it still holds a quiet place in American numismatic history. So the next time you see a plain brown penny dated 1991, take a second look. What seems ordinary could be a tiny time capsule from a turning point in American history, or even a small treasure hiding in plain sight. Because sometimes, the most interesting stories aren't found in museums or vaults. They're sitting right there in your change, waiting for someone curious enough to notice. Imagine finding a single penny in your pocket that looks completely ordinary, yet collectors would stop and stare at it for a long time. What if I told you that a quiet detail, something most people never notice, could turn a common-looking coin into a serious collector's prize? Today, we're uncovering the real story behind the 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin that proves not all valuable treasures shine loudly. The 1994 Lincoln penny is part of everyday American life. Millions of people handled these coins without a second thought, spending them on coffee, candy, or tossing them into jars at home. At first glance, this penny looks just like countless others, but one small detail sets some examples apart. That detail is the missing mint mark, and understanding why it matters takes us back into the history of modern U.S. coinage. In 1994, The United States was in a period of economic stability. The U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to keep up with daily commerce. The Lincoln Memorial penny design, first introduced in 1959, was still in use. This design showed Abraham Lincoln on the front and the Lincoln Memorial on the back, a look that had become deeply familiar to Americans for decades. By 1994, this penny had already passed through the hands of multiple generations. Most pennies made in 1994 were struck at the Philadelphia and Denver mints. Coins made in Denver carry a small D mint mark just below the date. Coins made in Philadelphia, however, traditionally do not carry a mint mark at all. That is where the phrase "no mint mark" comes from. For many collectors, this detail is confusing at first because a missing mint mark can mean two very different things: a normal Philadelphia issue or a rare minting error. The metal composition of the 1994 Lincoln penny is another important part of its story. By this time, pennies were no longer mostly copper. Instead, they were made of zinc with a thin copper coating. This change happened in the early 1980s to reduce production costs. While this makes most modern pennies less valuable in terms of metal, it also makes errors and unusual examples more interesting to collectors. The design itself remained unchanged. Abraham Lincoln's portrait on the front was still based on the classic sculpture by Victor David Brenner. His initials, VDB, appear discreetly on the coin. On the reverse, the Lincoln Memorial stands with tiny details that, under magnification, even show Lincoln's statue inside the building. These small details give collectors plenty to study, especially when searching for differences caused by minting errors. So why does the 1994 no mint mark penny attract attention if Philadelphia pennies normally have no mint mark? The answer lies in errors and condition. While most no mint mark 1994 pennies are common, a small number were struck with unusual characteristics. These include double dies, off-center strikes, weak strikes, and other production mistakes. When a modern coin shows a clear and dramatic error, collectors take notice. One of the most talked about varieties involves doubling on the date or lettering. This happens when the coin die shifts slightly during the minting process, creating a doubled image. To the naked eye, it may look like blurry or shadowed letters. Under magnification, the doubling can be obvious and exciting. These error coins are far rarer than standard examples and can bring strong prices. Condition is another major factor. Most 1994 pennies have circulated heavily. They show scratches, dull surfaces, and worn details. Finding one in pristine, uncirculated condition is much harder than people expect. Coins that look brand new with full shine and no wear can be graded highly by professional services. High-grade examples, especially with errors, are the ones that bring surprising values. Collectors have paid close attention to auction records for these coins. While a typical circulated 1994 no mint mark penny is worth only face value, exceptional examples tell a different story. High-grade uncirculated coins have sold for several dollars, and error varieties have reached much higher prices. In some cases, well-documented error pennies from this year have sold for hundreds of dollars, depending on the severity and type of the error. This is where excitement often builds. Many people hear rumors of pennies worth thousands or even millions, but the truth is more grounded. The value comes from rarity, condition, and collector demand. A normal 1994 no mint mark penny is common. A sharply struck, error-free, high-grade example is less common. A dramatic mint error on a well-preserved coin is rare. That is the path to higher value. If you think you might have one of these pennies, knowing how to identify it correctly is essential. Start by checking the date. It must clearly read 1994. Next, look just below the date for a mint mark. If there is no letter, that means it was struck in Philadelphia or possibly affected by an error. Then examine the coin carefully under good lighting. Look for doubling on the numbers, letters, or Lincoln's profile. Check if the coin is off-center or has unusual marks that do not look like damage. Weight and color can also offer clues. Because these pennies are zinc-based, damage that exposes the zinc core often shows a silvery color beneath the copper coating. This kind of damage does not add value, but unusual coloration caused during minting might. Be careful not to confuse post-mint damage with true mint errors. Collectors value mistakes made at the mint, not damage caused later. Many beginners worry about fake coins, but fakes of 1994 pennies are extremely rare. Instead, the bigger risk is misidentifying damage as an error. Scratches, dents, and corrosion are common and usually lower value. True mint errors have specific characteristics that repeat in known examples. Comparing your coin to verified images from trusted collector sources can help. There are also fun and surprising facts about this penny. In 1994, the US Mint produced billions of pennies. That makes it one of the most common dates overall. Yet within that massive number, a tiny fraction stands out. It's a reminder that rarity isn't always about age. Sometimes it's about surviving in perfect condition or being born with a small mistake. Collectors also appreciate this coin because it represents a turning point in modern coin collecting. Many people today start collecting by searching through pocket change. The 1994 no-mint mark penny is exactly the kind of coin that encourages that habit. It's recent enough to find, but old enough to carry history and possibility. Another reason collectors love this penny is accessibility. You don't need to spend thousands of dollars to start looking for one. Anyone can check their change, old jars, or inherited collections. The thrill comes from the hunt and the knowledge that something overlooked might still be out there. As time goes on, interest in modern era coins continues to grow. More collectors are paying attention to pennies from the 1980s and 1990s. As high-grade examples become harder to find, demand slowly increases. While this coin may never be common at the top levels of condition, that scarcity is exactly what fuels long-term interest. The 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny teaches an important lesson. Value in coin collecting is not always obvious. Sometimes it hides in plain sight, waiting for someone curious enough to look closer. It shows how history, manufacturing, and human error can come together in a small piece of metal. So the next time you see a penny dated 1994, don't rush past it. Hold it, examine it, and think about where it has been. That tiny coin has traveled through nearly 3 decades of American life. And while most are ordinary, a few carry stories that collectors are still eager to discover. In the world of coins, curiosity is everything. The more you look, the more you learn, and sometimes the more you find. The humble 1994 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is proof that even the smallest details can turn everyday change into something worth talking about. Imagine reaching into your pocket and pulling out a penny you've seen 1,000 times before. But what if that ordinary-looking coin quietly held a story that connects American history, modern minting, and the hopes of collectors across the country? Today we're diving into the 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny, a coin so common that it's often ignored, yet so interesting that collectors still search through rolls hoping to find something special. The 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny is a 1-cent coin struck in the United States during the late 1990s. At first glance, it looks exactly like many other Lincoln pennies you've handled throughout your life. Abraham Lincoln's familiar portrait appears on the front, and the Lincoln Memorial is featured on the back. There's no mint mark below the date, which tells us something important about where it was made and why millions of these coins still exist today. To understand this penny, we need to step back into the year 1998. America was experiencing a time of relative economic stability. The U.S. Mint was producing enormous quantities of coins to keep up with daily commerce. Pennies were still widely used in cash transactions, vending machines, and small purchases. In that year, the Philadelphia Mint produced over 5 billion Lincoln cents. Coins struck in Philadelphia traditionally do not carry a mint mark, which is why the 1998 penny without a mint mark is considered normal rather than unusual. The Lincoln cent itself has a long and meaningful history. First introduced in 1909 to honor the 100th anniversary of Abraham Lincoln's birth, it became the first U.S. coin to feature a real historical person. By 1998, the design had already been in use for decades. The front still showed Lincoln's profile, originally designed by Victor David Brenner, while the back displayed the Lincoln Memorial, a design that had been introduced in 1959. The 1998 penny is made primarily of zinc, with a thin outer coating of copper. This change in composition happened in 1982, when rising copper prices forced the mint to adjust. Even though the coin looks copper-colored, it actually contains about 97.5% zinc and only 2.5% copper. This detail matters to collectors because it affects weight, durability, and how the coin ages over time design-wise. The 1998 no-mint mark penny follows the classic modern Lincoln cent layout. On the front, you'll see Lincoln facing to the right, with the words "In God We Trust" above his head, "Liberty" to the left, and the date 1998 to the right. On the back, the Lincoln Memorial stands in the center, with United States of America across the top and 1 cent at the bottom. If you look closely, you can even see a tiny statue of Lincoln seated inside the memorial, a detail many people never noticed. So if billions were made, why do people still talk about the 1998 no-mint mark penny? The answer lies not in the standard version, but in the possibility of errors and condition. Most 1998 pennies are worth exactly 1 cent. However, collectors are always searching for coins that stand out from the rest. Errors, misstrikes, and unusually well-preserved examples can turn a common penny into something far more interesting. One of the most talked about error varieties from 1998 involves coins struck with mistakes during the minting process. These can include off-center strikes, double dies, clipped planchets, or weak strikes. While these errors are rare compared to the total number of coins made, they do exist. When found, they can be worth anywhere from a few dollars to several $100s, depending on how dramatic and clear the error is. Condition also plays a major role in value. A circulated 1998 penny that has spent years in pockets and cash registers is usually only worth face value. But a coin that has never been used, known as an uncirculated coin, can be worth more. In mint state condition, especially with bright original luster and no visible marks, a 1998 no-mint mark penny can sell for a few dollars. While that may not sound impressive, it's still many times its original value. Auction records show that high-grade examples have sold for surprising amounts. Pennies graded at the very top of the scale by professional grading services have reached prices ranging from $10 to over $50, depending on demand at the time. Error coins from 1998 have sold for even more, particularly when the error is obvious and visually striking. Identifying a real 1998 no-mint mark penny is actually simple, because there are no known widespread counterfeits targeting this coin specifically. Still, it's important to know what to look for. First, check the date carefully. It should read 1998 with no letter beneath it. The coin should weigh about 2.5 grams. If it feels unusually light or heavy, that could be a sign of damage or alteration. Examine the edges and surfaces for signs of tampering, such as filing or plating. If you think you've found an error, compare it to a normal penny from the same year. Look for doubling in the letters, uneven spacing, or missing design elements. True mint errors usually appear clean and natural, not scratched or forced. When in doubt, collectors often consult a professional coin dealer or send the coin to a grading service for authentication. There are also some fun and surprising facts about the 1998 Lincoln penny. This coin was produced during the final years of the Lincoln Memorial reverse design, which would be replaced in 2009. That means the 1998 penny represents the closing chapter of a design that had been used for half a century. Many people who grew up in the 1980s and 1990s remember these pennies as a normal part of everyday life, making them nostalgic as well as collectible. Another interesting detail is how many of these coins are still out there. Because so many were made, it's still possible to find a 1998 no-mint mark penny in circulation today. That sense of possibility is part of what excites collectors. You don't need to attend an expensive auction or inherit a rare collection. Sometimes, the next interesting coin is already in your change. Collectors love the 1998 no-mint mark penny not because it's rare by default, but because it represents the thrill of the hunt. It reminds people that even common coins can have hidden value. It also serves as an entry point for new collectors, offering a way to learn about grading, minting errors, and U.S. coin history without a large investment. For seasoned collectors, high-grade examples offer a challenge. Finding a nearly perfect coin from circulation is extremely difficult, especially after more than 2 decades. For beginners, the 1998 penny is approachable and familiar, making it a great way to start paying closer attention to everyday coins. As we wrap up, the 1998 no-mint mark Lincoln penny teaches us an important lesson about collecting. Not every valuable coin starts out rare. Some become interesting because of their history, their condition, or the small mistakes that slipped through the system. The next time you see a simple penny dated 1998, take a second look. That quiet little coin might not change your life, but it just might change the way you see the change in your pocket. And once you start looking closely, you may never stop wondering what other hidden stories are waiting to be discovered.